What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is a very special episode that I got to do with Mikey Taylor. I was really stoked that it worked out. It was almost a year and a half in the making, and it was just really cool to be able to collaborate on a project like this and see it come to life. So thanks to Makecraft for sponsoring this episode. I'm really stoked about it. Guys, please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We got lots more coming up. And here's a little background about Mikey. Mikey's a pro skater who is one of the best skaters who ever rode a board. Through all of his brand deals, films, competitions, he was always one of the best skaters out there and proved himself in every single moment. Mikey has transformed his entire career after skateboarding and is looking to build the next generation of people who are coming up through the ranks, working hard just like you and I. Through his company, Commune Capital, he is working every day to make the future easier for the youth and to invest in them in a big way. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on, dude.
Dude, thanks for going through what you went through to make this happen.
Not a big deal.
Dude, it worked out.
It worked out.
You showed that you are very resilient, which I appreciate. I really
good.
do.
Good. The big thing as a youth really is like trying to figure out how in the world you're going to make what you love to do happen.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I know that that's like been a staple for you. So
Yeah.
I guess my like first question to get into it was, as a pro skater, as an athlete, what was it that was like your driving force behind you, like saying, this is what I want to do the rest of my life?
You know what? Skating was a little bit different, only because I had found something that I loved so much and I was so obsessed with it that I just didn't want it to end. That's all it was for me. Like, you know, I got to the point where I turned 16. My parents wanted me to get a job, and that meant I couldn't skateboard as much. And I was so in love with it that like I wasn't willing to sacrifice time. So I convinced them that like I could get sponsors instead of getting a job, and they accepted that. And so I was hell bent on getting sponsors, you know, and then it was like I graduated high school and it was time to go to college, and that really meant skateboarding was going to end. So I just thought, you know what if I can get paid doing this? And it was all out of like desperation of not wanting my love to go away through skateboarding.
Yeah.
You know, so that was my driving factor. The challenge was I picked something that I couldn't do all day long forever.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's probably part of the goal, right? Is to figure out, you know, the mantra is like, you pick a career that you love, you never work a day in your life. And I think the hardest part is, especially nowadays, if you're trying to get into media or you're trying to get into film or whatever, even skating, which is even more selective, I would imagine. The challenge being is like how much effort do you have to put in from the start, and how resilient do you have to be? Yeah. And at what point is a point where you stop and turn around and come back? Yeah. And so what was that like for you? Like, when did you know that was the point of no return?
Oh, gosh. To tell you the truth, how I look at things is I don't allow myself the opportunity to not succeed at it. And it's purely off this, I will not stop doing it until I have it. Yeah. So, you know, from the point of me like being young, I was just like unwilling to not have it work out. And so I don't know what it feels like to like drive at something obsessively and then like decide this isn't working. Yeah. I have no idea. Yeah. You know, I'm just like, I saw Grant Cardone. I don't know if you know who that is. No. I saw him last week. And he has this like famous quote that he always says, if you never quit, you never fail. Right. And it's so like interesting to think of like the only time you actually really do fail is when you stop trying to pursue what you're heading at. Yeah. And so I don't know. I've just always taken that path. So I would say from the second I picked up a skateboard, there was no turning back. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Until it ended up ending. Yeah. Then it was like, that was a whole different challenge. Yeah. But what's interesting though is, to your first question, I didn't experience that challenge as much becoming a pro skateboarder as I did exiting pro skateboarding and having to figure out what the next thing I was going to do that I love doing, because skateboarding almost felt it felt accidental in a sense, because it wasn't like I was like, you know what, I want to be a pro skateboarder so bad, I'm going to make it happen. It was this, I just love it so much, I don't want it to stop. Yeah, yeah. So once it became like, well, now it has to stop, that's when it got really hard for me. Yeah. Because then I had to actually label or define what I was going to do, try to have that align with this experience that I had for 15 years, loving what I'm doing, and then figuring out how to make money doing it. So that's actually a newer experience for me.
Yeah, totally.
In a sense.
I would imagine too, like, what age did you start?
Skating?
Yeah, like pro. When did you go pro?
I turned pro when I was 19.
19.
Yeah.
So
I started when I was 13. So I was actually kind of late to skating.
Right, because like I know some
These
of your
kids
friends,
start when
like,
they're like 3 and 4.
Sean Malto and
Yeah.
guys that starting got pro really, really young.
Yeah.
And skating's unique in the sense I think that it mirrors acting, where you can start an acting career very young.
Yeah.
You can be professional, get paid really well.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a segue into what you're doing now, because I know that you make it probably so many years and you're doing street league and you're doing all that stuff. You're like at the top of your game.
Yeah.
And then, like you're saying, at this point in your life, I watched that video of yours that you were saying you just like could not get sponsored again. Like it was just at a point where, and that's got to be so strange. Like you get through this amazing career, and then you stop.
Yeah.
So what happened next?
A lot of pain. I got to a point where I got hurt, and when I got hurt, I lost my main sponsor. And I was 34 at this time, and I had just had surgery, and this was my dilemma. I was 6 months out to being able to skate again, probably another 6 months until getting to a point of skating 100%. And then I didn't know how long it was going to take beyond that to potentially get a sponsor.
Yeah.
So what I was weighing was, do I stop now and fully transition, or do I spend the next 2 years trying to get a sponsor, which might only last another year or two?
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like, the latter was just trying to avoid the inevitable.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just decided, okay, this sucks, but this is what I'm up against, and this is my next problem that I've got to figure out. And that led to me, trying to create what I have now.
Yeah.
I guess.
Totally. Well, and with Commune, what's so cool is one of your videos that you put out recently was about the youth. I can't remember quite the name that you had, but it's you and P-Rod and down in Long Beach.
Oh, yeah.
You know which video I'm talking about?
We did it for Long Beach Wilson High School for their art program. Yeah.
Yes. And I watched that, and I was thinking to myself, through that, I was just like, this is the uniqueness of what your brand has now become.
Yeah.
Like the ability for you to transition your life of skateboarding at a young age and the youthful vibe of skate. I think skating is probably like one of the most beautiful things in life.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's really cool. I just think it's different than most other sports.
Yeah.
I had a sports upbringing as well, and like coming up through basketball and all those kind of sports, and like you find something redeeming out of it, I think, after the fact, even if you don't love it. But for you, like coming out of that and then starting Commune with a similar drive and determination to, help change lives and help the youth, and then also like invest in property and all that stuff, that probably came out of a similar desire of yours to excel, right?
Skateboarding for me was all about me. Like, if I'm being completely honest, it was what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Even with how I was using social media, it was all based around how do I get more eyeballs on me, the tricks I'm doing. And so when my career ended, and really the challenge I was faced was, I put my heart and soul into something I loved so much. And when it went away, I felt like I was isolated and nothing. I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore.
Yeah.
And in the process of me trying to figure out how to climb out of this challenge, which was, me trying to find my identity and purpose again, I realized truly how I loved what I was doing, but I wasn't really getting fulfillment out of it because it was so self-driven. Mm-hmm. And so a big change for me in starting Commune was trying to create something that wasn't just about me, and also even in how we're creating content, like thinking about who I'm making the content for, as opposed to figuring out how I can take them and get them onto me. And so that is probably the biggest difference now, and that came from just, being dropped to my knees and having to figure out how to stand again.
Yeah.
The succeeding part isn't, it's funny, man. Like, people ask me all the time, like, what's your like goal? Like, how much money are you trying to get? And like, I don't know how to answer that because what I love doing is I like the challenge of figuring out how to get to the next place, the next level, right? And I enjoy that process so much that like once I get somewhere, I just want to enjoy it again and again. And it just leads towards what maybe looks like achievement or drive. But dude, it's just pure enjoyment. It really is. It's like what I think you opened with that. It's like when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. It truly doesn't.
Totally.
It's just hard to find that thing. That's
Right.
the difficult part.
That's the challenge. And we kind of hinted on this a couple times, but
I hope I answered that
you did.
correctly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's perfect. I mean, it's whatever, you know, it's you, man. It's coming from you, you know, like that's the most important thing. But, and kind of along with that, actually, like expressing yourself is a huge part of what you do in your life, right? In the sense of whether it's physically, like in skating or being an athlete or whatever, or mentally in the aspects that you put into your career and how to build it and, you know, the branding of it and all that. But a big thing too that I noticed a lot from kind of what I've learned from you, especially since you started the company, is investing in the next generation. And from somebody like myself, there have been people in my life that have done that. And I've been so fortunate that people have given me a shot. And for me, actually moving to Santa Barbara came out of a friend of mine, an old, like, kind of like colleague, honestly, more or less. He was a little older than me, but he just had to leave out of town for a job, and I was going to clean up like a round of bug edits as an editor, and it would only take me like an hour. Then that led to part-time and then full-time and a whole life change. Yeah. So would you say that like kind of having an open mind nowadays, both in business and media and all that stuff, is an important thing?
100%. 100%. And I actually have a good story to complement that. In skating, when skating came up, you kind of had two routes that you could take. Yeah. You could wait until you got sponsored by the best company, or you could start getting sponsored by companies that weren't as well received and start climbing the ladder until you got to a point of having the best. That's the approach I took. My first sponsors were not very cool sponsors. And I had other friends that would only get sponsored by the best. And the hard part about that is like, I believe you do anything you can to move to the next level. And a lot of people just expect to go from A to Z. And dude, a lot of people don't, that jump's pretty hard to do. You know, so I'm a big believer in like, if you can do something that's going to either put you in a position to take you to the next level or equip yourself with more tools to be better at the next thing you do, take it. 100%. And look, not everything has to be a passion. I know that's like, that is the ideal, but like, if you have an ultimate goal or purpose on where you're headed, doing things that might not directly align with what your end goal is, but things that you could do that will apply towards getting you to your end goal. Yeah. Dude, that is huge. Yeah. You know, so I think it's like, find out where you want to go. And if anything helps you get there, take it. If it doesn't help you get there, leave it.
That's great advice. You know? Great advice. One of the big, I think, motivations of a pro athlete is to play or perform at their best level all the time, right? I would imagine that that's probably the drive. Yeah. I've never been one. But something that is big with LeBron James and his branding, and I mentioned this to you before we even started, was more than an athlete, is his kind of coined term that he created and turned into a business. How much of that, if you're familiar too, like how much of that would you agree with? Like, I think his thing is like, shut up and play is kind of something that he's railed against for a long time. Yeah. Did you get a little bit of that in the skate world?
Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I mean, the first time I tried to call it be more than a skater, I was sponsored by the shoe company, and I wanted to be more involved with like designing the shoes and being a part of marketing and helping like bring the team on. And I had this whole like idea that I told the president of the company about. And after the meeting, he looked at me, he's like, why don't you just like go skate? Like, you know what I'm saying? So yes, I absolutely resonate with that. But I think there's some athletes that resonate with that, and I think there's others that don't. I think there are some athletes that are like, I'm an athlete. That's all I am. And I don't know, I don't think there's something wrong with that. I just think there are people that become athletes that have the desire or personality or whatever you want to call it, that end up being more than just the sport you're doing.
Yeah.
You know? So yes, I would, with all that said, I resonate with a lot of that.
And I think in a way, I don't know if you would agree with this, but from what I've seen, the way that even sports media is set up with ESPN and, any other, The Ringer or whatever, the way that they're all set up is to favor the primetime sports. And there's so many other sports, which I think skating has arisen into that with X Games, obviously, and all that stuff and other things, and like televising Street League and like all that stuff. But I've always felt like skating and action sports and all that stuff was kind of left out of that mix, and that the media favors those giants, right? And I think that's to be said for entertainment, whatever. But did you feel a little of that in your career? Because you were kind of in that early swing of, like, you lived during the early X Games era and was all that stuff.
So I grew up at a time when skateboarding didn't want to be known by the rest of the world. So like even like X Games, like when X Games came out, we were like, this is whack. Like we didn't want like mainstream sports to know who we were. It ended up being arguably a blessing because it meant more focus on skateboarding, which meant the companies do better, which led to us making more money. Yeah. So, there are pros and cons to it, but at least my generation, like, no, like we didn't want to be on, the main stage, I guess. But now, I mean, dude, skateboarding's going to the Olympics. This is a whole different conversation.
It's incredible.
So it's really just changed. I recognize the change. I think it's like cool. But I grew up at a different time.
Yeah. That's cool. I figured I would throw that your way just because of that, because you kind of were in that era where skateboarding was skateboarding, and it had, I think it still does kind of have that cult following that is like obsessive over the sport.
Like, dude, to put an example, like when Instagram came out, my sponsors didn't want me posting my skateboarding on Instagram.
That's crazy.
They were like, why are you doing this? Like, social media, this is whack. This is not for skateboarding.
Wow.
So like,
it was like its own culture.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's like part of it. It's like, that can definitely hinder skateboarding, but it's part of the beauty of it as well.
Yeah.
That it's so like anti-establishment. It's like we're on our own, little island. And
totally. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I think something I wanted to hint on too is kind of going on this thread, and I'm riding it so hard because I know that you've, you had that life as a skater and a pro athlete and all that stuff, but you also, there's so much more to that. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that you've been able to build that into a wonderful career and a path that, a lot of people don't know how to do. Like you said, being in a channel of which, as a sport, like they wanted to be exclusive to their own, right? And you are more interested in more than that as well, and there's not many that do that, but somebody who did was Kobe.
Yeah, that's right.
And I wanted to kind of get a take from you on how his passing has been kind of a shakeup for a lot of people, and like kind of what did he mean to you as an athlete as you were going through the ranks?
I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. It's felt like we were off the whole last week, and like I didn't even know Kobe. I think it was, for us at least, like, what happened to him is every family's worst nightmare. So there's a sense of like when it's that public, like, you look around and go, oh, dude, this could happen to us. So there was that side that was sad, worse than sad. I think it's just awful,
horrible. Yeah.
Him as an athlete was, you can't deny that somebody that puts that much time and energy and focus to become the best, I don't even know the right word for it, a staple in achieving that. Yeah. To me, the greatest, honestly, like looking at the stage I'm at now, I'm more impressed with what Kobe did 3 years after sports than everything he did in sports. It was to become the best like that. And then to not only build, I mean, the thing I don't know if most people know about Kobe, dude, he is intelligent. He's an incredibly smart guy. And to take a VC fund to the size he was, to have been launching that many brands, and then to like see all the time he was dedicated towards his family, That's what I think is pretty rad.
Yeah.
And the gnarly part is the whole story behind him getting the helicopter. Did you know this? Mm-hmm. That's the one that you're like, it's just ripping your heart out of you.
To be with his daughter. And
totally.
To take
because taking his daughter to school was so valuable to him, but he wanted to maintain the same schedule of his craft, and that was his way to have both. It was like, damn.
I know. And oh my gosh, for me, it was weird because my parents, like my whole family has been Laker fans my whole life, like all the way up. I watched the championship run with him and Shaq when I was a kid, like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Totally.
Like,
I got to go to his last game.
A long time ago. Yeah. And, it was transformative, really. Yeah. Like when that happened, I felt the same way for a couple of days. I was really in a haze, even though that's the craziest thing is people in sports and people in media that have an impact on you, even though you don't even know them.
Totally.
And his work ethic.
100%. I think what's fascinating too is he might have, it sucks to even say this, but with his passing, it almost feels like he made an even bigger impact somehow on his passing, because he was able to take so many people and have them look around at their situation, their loved ones, their time, and go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to value this more importantly. I think it's just a testament of the person he was, you know? But it's brutal.
Totally. It's horrible. Yeah. It's really sad. It's been really, really sad. Kind of actually in closing, Artie, but, what are some of your plans with Commune? Like, what is, I mean, this is funny because you said this earlier that you get asked this all the time, but
you know, when I first started the company and I really wanted to like create content that was adding value to other people, and I kind of was basing around the situation that I was currently in, and that was on the investing side.
Yeah.
Right. And as I started going through that process, I realized that I was missing so many people because the majority of people weren't even given the education or tools to even get to the position of investing.
Yeah.
And so over the last year, we've really kind of brought it all the way back to the beginning. Yeah. And we've been spending way more time creating content around the foundation and kind of the fundamentals, and seeing the impact that's making has kind of opened our eyes to go, you know what? There is such a big problem that like us ourselves can't even fulfill.
Yeah.
And so we're really just trying to drive this message home, and in which the principles we stand on how to successfully manage money and not let money ultimately control and direct your future in a sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, dude, we're spending a lot of our time on just trying to educate and get as much of this out there as possible.
Totally.
The investment side is, I think, it's easier to talk about because it's so much easier for it to be numbers based.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just say they go hand in hand, but the investment side, it's awesome, but you don't feel the impact you feel as when somebody emails you or DMs you and goes, dude, I didn't learn this from my parents. I didn't learn this from school. I am watching you guys, and you are ultimately becoming my place to learn about money. There's a different type of fulfillment you get than, developing a building and, refining and pulling cash out. Like, that's awesome, but this feels like we're making a bigger impact here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I wish it was longer, but that was great.
All good. Thank you.
We were just talking about you got to keep it short for the people.
That's right. You guys don't want long form.
Yeah. But thanks for being on. You can check out Mikey on Instagram, everything else at Mikey Taylor, and then Commune Capital, right, as well on Instagram and all the YouTube and everything. Run it up. And thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. We got a lot more coming this year. Thanks for following us, and we'll see you later.
Check.